Are you playing a cleric and are having a little bit Are you playing a cleric and having a little bit of trouble figuring out what spells to prepare every day? Well, you're in luck. Because behind today's secret door, best cleric spells, levels 1 through 5. So behind today's secret door, best cleric spells, levels 1 through 5. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons & Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Alright, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo and Doug for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. Well, this video will be exactly what it sounds like. What I will do, and let me just go through the criteria a little bit on how this list will work. First of all, cleric spells, of course, any divine spell. You have access to everything on the list. You're able to change your preparations every day. So your spell selection is really not as critical, but that doesn't mean that you're always going to be picking the right spells to go out on your average adventuring day. Now, that's the critical thing for this list. I'm giving you what I think are the best spells to just have in general for your preparations. Now, how it generally works out is that you'll have about 3 spells per level to be able to prepare. So what I'm going to do in the list is I'm going to give you the top 3 spells per level, and I'm going to give you the best domain spell per level just as kind of a bonus to be able to ascertain what domain is actually contributing the best for the spell list. But let me just back up a little bit about the domains. They're all actually pretty good. One particular domain is going to dominate this list, however. So I don't want you to think that that domain and that domain alone has a good spell list. It edges everybody out. And it does this for about 3 levels. The other, and 3 out of 5 is actually pretty good for one domain. Now, because you're able with divine spells to be able to change your preparations on a daily basis, if you know you're going into certain kinds of situations, obviously certain spells may be what you should be preparing for, and they are probably not going to be on this list. What is showing up on this list are going to be things that are going to be useful in kind of any environment and are just always going to be useful. So part of my hope in a video like this is for it to become kind of like a cheat sheet that you can use just to be able to make sure that you have your general run-of-the-mill kind of best spells available for your cleric. Because if you do that, you're going to be pretty close to optimal. If you are a caster, casting is what you do best. Now, having said all that, I need to address one other point here because we are talking about clerics, and clerics are kind of weird in the D&D world, especially now from 5th edition and into the, what are we calling it, 5.5, 5.24, whatever. Clerics don't have to be the party's healer. In fact, you could argue that many clerics should probably only have a little bit of healing in their spell preparations. So while healing is going to show up quite a bit on this list, and because the healing spells are so important, and because so many players are still going to play a cleric as a primary healer, I feel it's necessary. But I want you to consider, even if you're thinking about playing a healer as a primary healer kind of fashion, that you only need a handful of these heal spells in your entire preparations to be an effective healer. So because of that, in some cases, when a healing spell shows up, if there's a really good spell later on the list, I might provide the top 4 spells for that particular cleric level. Okay, well, let's start the list. So at level 1, at number 3, I have Bane. Bane is a really nice debuff spell. It can affect up to 3 targets. They get their save. If they fail their save, they get a d4 minus to their attack rolls and saving throws. And for every level you upcast Bane, you'll be able to affect 1 more target. So it's always going to be an effective spell to have. Debuffing is a really nice thing to be able to do. You don't generally think of a cleric as being a debuffer controller, but it might be very nice to have this in your arsenal. And in the number 2 spot, I have 2 spells, and these are both heal spells. We have Healing Word and we have Cure Wounds in the number 2 spot. You don't need to carry both of these. Some players will, but you don't need to. Now, I famously think that Healing Word is one of the most overrated spells. One of the biggest controversies in the last edition was about how broken Healing Word was in some people's minds. I think that they're equal. I'm not saying Healing Word isn't a good spell. Of course it is. It's a very good spell. It's just not broken, in my opinion. It doesn't do a particularly good job at giving you hit points, but it does do is it allows you to pick up a character at range, which is very useful. But when you do pick that character up, they're in big trouble because they don't have a lot of hit points. And because it's a bonus action, of course, you have your action available to you, but that's generally going to be restricted to be casting a cantrip. And so then if we look at it that way and say, well, what's the big deal about Healing Word? The big deal is that you're able to pick up that character at range, in my opinion. That's the big get for Healing Word over something like Cure Wounds, which is touch. The other advantage that Cure Wounds has is that while you can upcast both of them, upcasting Healing Word is not necessarily all that great of an idea. But upcasting Cure Wounds is a thing to actually think about doing. So both spells are very good. They both serve a very specific purpose. Taking either one is fine. Take one of them. You could take both if you really want to be a dedicated healer. There's probably very little I can say to stop you in doing that, but I would only take one of these 2 spells. And at the number 1 spot here at first level is, of course, Bless. As good as Bane is, Bless is actually better. Why? Because there's no saving throw. So you affect 3 targets, they're affected. And that's the inverse of Bane. So everybody gets a D4 to add to their saving throws and to their attack rolls. Now that extra D4 means that you're giving an extra 12.5% on average to attack rolls and to saving throws. So when you think of Bless, you don't think of it as being necessarily as a DPR effect, but it actually is a DPR effect because it's increasing the hitting percentage rather dramatically at first level. And the fact that it has a defensive buff with the saving throws is super great. And that's all saving throws. So it's a huge bonus to be able to get here at first level and for the rest of your career. It's an offensive and defensive spell. And because it's a buff, it doesn't have a saving throw. It's just a great spell. And it upcasts very nicely. You add an additional target for every level that you upcast. So Bless, yes, at number 1. Now the thing is about Bless, however, is because it is concentration, it's going to be competing in later levels with other spells. So it will fade a little bit. But having Bless there is a really great use if you don't have, let's say you're in a situation where you want to cast a concentration spell, but you don't have the slots to be able to burn one, or you want to save your big spell slots for something that you're expecting to come later. Bless is a really good way to throw something at the party to just be able to get this fight over with quickly if it's some kind of a trash fight or something like that. I'm talking about later levels now. Bless can fit that role very, very nicely. Or if you're just in a situation where you're desperate and you're almost out of spell slots, Bless can still be very effective. But it will certainly diminish in terms of its value as a go-to spell. Naturally, it's a first level spell, so it will diminish as time goes on. Now here at level 1, the best domain spell, in my opinion, is from the Life domain, and it gets Bless. Having Bless always there and always prepared is going to be great. It's going to be very handy to always have that, and it frees up what is one of the most dominant spells here at early levels. It frees you up to be able to grab other things. So a very, very nice thing to have. Even though it is on your spell list, having the best spell, in my opinion, at the level of able to always, you can't really beat that. If for whatever reason you didn't take one of the healing spells at this level, I can't imagine you not taking Healing Word. Let me put it this way. I think it's virtually required for all clerics to have either Healing Word or Cure Wounds. But if you didn't, the 4th spell, so you would have a top 3 effectively to work with here, Sans Healing, would probably be something like Command because of its flexibility. It's a nice spell. I don't think that I would sacrifice Cure Wounds, especially at low levels, or Healing Word for Command, but you could. Or if you were playing something like a Life Cleric and needed another spell because you already have Bless, taking a good look at command would be a very good idea. So starting at second level, I would like to start with a strange caveat because I think it bears a little bit of discussion here. There is a spell that was great in 5th edition, a must-take spell for a cleric that fell from grace very, very, very far. And that spell is Spiritual Weapon. Spiritual Weapon has been a premier cleric spell forever, and now it is close to garbage. Its uses are so niche now that it's very difficult for me to understand why they did this to this spell. All they did to it was add concentration, but that made all the difference. Spiritual Weapon was that wonderful little extra. That it was that little extra that you could get from out of your cleric that made it so, so good. Now, because it has concentration, it's competing with too many good spells, and it fails in the comparison. Spiritual Weapon's expected damage output is matched or exceeded by Bless. And Bless is giving a bonus to saving throws as well. Now, Bless is concentrations. Now, Spiritual Weapon is concentration. So if Bless can do what Spiritual Weapon can do, what's the point? Now, there is one place, that niche that I was talking about, where Spiritual Weapon can shine, and that is if you are in solo play. Or if you were in a party of like 2, then Bless is going to come out lower, but it's still giving the bonus to saving throws. So you'd come out like a couple points less than you would get out of Spiritual Weapon and damage, but you would be gaining what you would get from Bless from saving throws. I just don't see the point in this spell anymore, other than situations like that, generally speaking in solo play. Or, if you are in a situation where you've been captured and you're alone, so it's not necessarily solo play. So for the day you prepare a Spiritual Weapon, that kind of a thing, sure, that's understandable. But it's a very sad thing for clerics. Now, I don't know why they felt that Spiritual Weapon was a big threat and why they did that. They clearly did it intentionally. I can't say, but Spiritual Weapon is no longer a go-to spell. It is a stay away from spell. The spell I also want to mention is also not on the list, so this would be kind of like an honorable mention. This would be something that if you wanted some kind of offensive spell that wasn't Bless to replace Spiritual Weapon, I would take something like Hold Person. I love Hold Person a lot. In the old days, it's still a good spell, but it's save or suck. And those, just generally speaking, you're taking your chances with them. So I would put Hold Person as sort of the honorable mention. Now, the top 3 spells at this level, it's strange because there's a lot of good spells, but they're not great. So I often, when I do the Wizard, Warlock, and Sorcerer lists, second level is such a juicy level. It's second level for a cleric used to be 2 really great spells. Now there's only 1. But there's still a bunch of good spells. So the next 2 spells are good. They are just good enough for them to be mentioned here above the rest, in my opinion. So at number 3, I have Prayer of Healing. Now, Prayer of Healing, when you have the time to use it, because it is a 10-minute casting time, it's great. Warlocks will love you. Fighters will love you. So you're basically turning a 30-minute requirement for a short rest into 10 minutes. And that's a really great value. And so I'm not saying that that's not great. It is. Obviously it is. But it is a situational kind of spell. You're not always going to be able to cast that spell. But when you can, and of course you're going to get healing out of it as well, but the big get, in my opinion, is getting that short rest effect at 10 minutes. That's really, really big. But it is really situational. So I have to recommend it here at number 3. Great spell, but situational. Now, whether number 2 should not be number 3, whether number 3 shouldn't be number 2, it just kind of depends. Number 2, I have Augury. Augury is rather infamous for your DM's ability to mess with you with. You're a 3rd level character when you first get Augury, so you don't have a lot of resources. So having something like Augury is a really nice option to have. I'm keeping it here simple. I would put it in my preparation list simply just in case. It can help move the party along, or if you just need to, have a kind of a coin flip answer that the DM can kind of put their thumb on a little bit, then Augury is the way to go. Its effect is not nearly as good as Prayer of Healing. But because Prayer of Healing has that casting time, I had to downgrade it here. Otherwise, I would clearly flip it up to number 2. So they're really just kind of interchangeable depending on the circumstance. But at number 1, and it's a very clear-cut one, is, of course, Aid. Now, Aid, you're going to be able to pick up 3 party members should they all drop. Now, if you're a 3rd level character, when you first get access to Aid, that could happen. If multiple players are going to drop, it's going to be out here in these low levels. So grabbing Aid as soon as you hit 3rd level is absolutely critical. And that 5-point hit point maximum bump that it's giving you at low levels is a substantial bonus. And of course, it famously stacks with temporary hit points. So it's just a great, great, great spell. So Aid, clearly number 1, not a big surprise. The other spells on the list, they all have merits, but none of them scream out to me to warrant special note on the list for general play, as much as Augury and Prayer of Healing would, and of course, Aid. And for our best domain spell, Trickery comes in with Invisibility. Now, Invisibility is a great problem-solving spell in Dungeons & Dragons. It lets you bypass a lot of circumstances. So, yeah, having a cleric with the ability to cast Invisibility is super great. Wonderful spell, one of my favorite spells. So, yeah, Trickery at number 1 here for the 2nd level domain spells. Okay, now we get to 3rd level, and I am going to kind of break my rule a little bit on how many I'm going to cover on this. I'm going to give you 5. And that's because 2 of them are healing. 1 of them you absolutely have to take. These are not situational spells, and because you can prepare them, you can change your preparations, you will want to be considering having these in preparations on any given day. At number 5, or honorable mention, or whatever you want to call it, is Sending. Sending is a great utility spell. It's on your list, and because you can pick when you want to have it, it's great to have in that kind of a sense. So, in other words, if you know that you're going to be in town for a week, having preparation for Sending to be able to start being able to communicate in that way, very, very, very useful. Or if you're in a different kind of situation on an adventure where you know Sending will be useful, then of course you can prep it. But it's a great spell to prep on downtime. Now at number 4, we have Dispel Magic. Now the Cleric never gets Counterspell, and I look at Dispel Magic as kind of like Counterspell after the fact. It's not as useful as Counterspell, I'm not saying that it is, but it can do a lot of things that you really want it to be able to do. And it can be incredible, and I don't like using this term, but I'm going to use it anyway. It can be incredibly clutch. But you can live without Dispel Magic. So it sits here at number 4. Should you, shouldn't you? That's kind of up to you. But it's one to always be eyeing at. Dispel Magic. That should probably be something you should consider. Now, at number 3, I have Mass Healing Word. I don't really believe that you need this very much because Aid is going to essentially do the same thing for you. So if you have Aid, I don't really think that you need it. But it does do something that Aid does not. It affects up to 6 targets. Now, will 6 people be dropping and that's where Healing Word really shines? No. But it's a spell that you can cast when just one person has dropped, but everybody is down some and some hit points. So you give everybody a little bit. I mean, it's not going to be great, but it's a little bit of something. That's one scenario where you might use Mass Healing Word. I put it here because simply the amount of targets that it affects. You can clearly live without it, but it is here at number 3 because it is something that you should clearly consider for your preparations. And at number 2, we have the spell. You could easily say it should be number 1. That's fine with me. Revivify. Revivify is a spell that changed how we play Dungeons & Dragons. There was no Revivify before 5th edition. If you died before that, you were dead, unless you happened to be 9th level and had access to 5th level spells. Otherwise, that was it. You were dead, and you either were 9th level and had access to raise dead, or you dragged that body off to a temple and hoped there was a healer that could do it for you. So it changed how we play D&D considerably. Now, because you are a cleric, if you don't have Revivify and somebody dies, even if you have told everyone that you're not playing as a primary healer, it doesn't matter. They're going to hate you for it. So just put it on your preparation if you... and hopefully you don't need to cast it. But if you do need to cast it, you will be a hero or you will be hated. It's just one preparation slot, folks. Just put it on your... you owe it to your fellow players to put it on your list, is my opinion anyway. Now, at number 1 is the spell that is the crowning glory of combat spells for the cleric, and that's Spirit Guardians. Spirit Guardians has a 15-foot emanation. That means it's 7 by 7, so it's affecting 49 squares. It is concentration, so it's not going to play nice with Bless. It's not going to play nice with other concentration spells. So but it is the one, this is the spell you're waiting for to get as a cleric for combat. This is what makes the cleric shine in combat. It's one of the best AoE spells in the game. You might argue that it's the best AoE spell in the game because of how long it lasts, its large area of effect, and the fact that that area of effect is moving with you and that it selects targets so you don't have to worry about sculpting the spell or anything like that. It only affects enemies. Just a fantastic, great spell. Spirit Guardians love to have it. Wizards would love to have it. Anybody would love to have it, but only clerics get it. Well, I mean, generally speaking. And the best domain spell here, now there are several good ones, but Trickery wins again, and it gets Hypnotic Pattern. So now you have a cleric that has the premier control spell at this level in Hypnotic Pattern. That is a great get, especially if you were wanting to play a cleric that doesn't want to really do damage to anything. If you're wanting to play something very peace-minded, then something like Hypnotic Pattern, where you are able to, really affect the opponent, the enemy, and in an area of effect way. I mean, Hypnotic Pattern is pretty hard to argue with. And what's nice for that Trickery cleric is that it's giving you an option where you don't have to worry about casting one of their best spells in Spirit Guardians because you have this other one of the best spells in Hypnotic Pattern. So that's why it's here at the best domain spell. All right, level 4. I could say that actually here at level 4 is just not a great spell level for just about anybody. It was actually hard to come up with, 3 WoW spells for you, but there are a couple of pretty good ones. So when we start here at number 3, this is not a spell that I would normally pick, but it is something that I would consider taking in the right circumstances. When it matters, it really works nicely, and that is Death Ward. Death Ward is a spell that I'm not normally going to be probably casting, but I might put it on my list. The thing about Death Ward is that when it works, it's really great to be able to just shrug off being dropped. Now, granted, you could immediately just get dropped right after that, but it does do that. And so it gives that character a chance, hopefully recover and be able to continue on in the fight. So Death Ward, but again, it's only here because we're talking about 4th level spells and there's not really great ones. It's a pretty good spell. Now, at number 2, I have Divination. Now, Divination is a pretty good spell. It's also a ritual, which is great to have. This actually is kind of the augmented version of Augury, and it serves the same kind of purpose. It can end arguments. If the party is just famously arguing about what to do, you'll always be able to just start casting Divination as a ritual while they're arguing and be able to ask the question, and maybe you can end this argument prematurely. In my experience, a lot of DMs are just wanting to be able to tell you something or suggest something, but they don't want to do that because there isn't an organic reason to do so. Divination gives them that ability to give you that little crumb that you need to get going on the right path. And because it's a ritual and because it can do all of that, Divination, very, very good spell. In fact, I think it's actually more valuable than my number one pick, but my number one pick is a combat spell, and so I had to put it at number one, and that spell is Banishment. Now, Banishment is a good spell, not a great spell. It's a Saber Suck spell. I'm not a big fan of single target Saber Suck spells. When they work, they're glorious. When they don't work, you just wasted a slot and got nothing. So I'm not the biggest fan of those spells. But it does do its job beautifully well when it works. For the vanilla spell list for the Cleric, it's your best option. And at the best domain spell, at level 4, once again, we get Trickery, and they get Dimension Door. Now, one of my favorite spells in D&D is Dimension Door. Incredibly useful in utility or as a tactical escape. If combat is going badly, not only can you get out of there, but you can grab an ally and get out of there. The ability to bypass incredible obstacles is just enormously valuable, and the ability to escape out of situations also incredibly valuable. Yes, Dimension Door, incredible spell. Great to have for the Trickery Cleric. They get a bunch of really great domain spells. All right. We get to 5th level, and I'm going to give you a handful of spells that I want you to pay attention to. They're not going to be in the top 3 of the list, but they all have very good reasons why you might want to be looking at them. Now, the first on that list is Legend Lore. Legend Lore is a spell that can give you really great information about famous kind of topics, and the more you know about that topic, it will give you stuff that you don't know. So it's operating on an ideal situation in that case. If you don't know anything about the topic, Legend Lore is not necessarily the greatest topic. So it's one of those things where you should, if you're trying to research a particular magic item or some lich or whatever, you can do a lot of research on it and get a lot, and then cast Legend Lore, and then you get the real good stuff. So incredibly situational. So never, ever, ever have this on your standard preparation list, I wouldn't say. But when the circumstance is there, Legend Lore is something you can always be glad that you have access to it. So the next 2 are combat spells. I'm just going to throw them both out together, and that is Insect Plague and Summon Celestial. And with Summon Celestial, not only are you getting combat options, but it actually has healing options as well to it. So it's something to strongly consider. So if you felt like you really needed one extra combat option, I would take one of these 2 spells, either Summon Celestial or Insect Plague. Insect Plague has the virtue of being big area of effect. But in truth, if you have Spirit Guardians, I wouldn't be doing anything but just probably casting that or upcasting it, quite frankly. So I can't recommend necessarily taking either of these over Spirit Guardians, but there are 2 that I would want to take a look at. But at number 3 on the list is one that you are going to want to be taking a very strong look at. And I think you probably have to take this on the list. This also is a list that has 2 potential healing spells. So Mass Cure Wounds. So Mass Cure Wounds is going to also hit 6 targets just like Mass Healing Word did. But you're going to be averaging 22 points of healing on every target, 22, 23, 22 and a half. Per target. So it's generating over, if you hit all 6, you're talking about over 130 points of healing. So I think Mass Cure Wounds is pretty much a must take in most circumstances. The number 1 on this list, you could argue that it is or is not a must take, but I'll talk about that when we get there. At number 2, we have Scrying. Scrying is one of my favorite spells for 5th level. That should come as no surprise to you if you are at all familiar with the channel. I just think the ability to be able to get that kind of information routinely is really, really, really good. I love this spell. Scrying, wonderful spell. And the fact that you have access to it, great. But at number 1, we have Raise Dead. Now, Raise Dead, you could argue, should not be on your preparation, that you should only prepare it when somebody's dead, because there is no real time limit to worry about. So you could argue that, but what if somebody died and in the party, in the game, and that minute that Revivify, that window, that 1 minute window of Revivify stopped? Do you really not want to be able to pull them back as soon as possible? I don't know. I can see either argument. Personally, I think if I were playing a cleric and if I had Revivify, I would not put Raise Dead on my preparations, but that's going to be up to how often people die, how draconian your DM is, all that type of stuff. You may want to put it on your prep list. You might not. I would recommend probably not, but it's something that you always have to be ready to put on your list. Let's put it that way. Now, for the best domain spell, it's going to be, I'm going to call it a tie. The Domain of Light gets Scrying. Love Scrying. And Life gets Mass Cure Wounds. Also in the top 3. That frees you up for a preparation for yet another spell. So which one is more valuable? It's really up to you. I think that either one of them is going to be just about as valuable as the other one is. So I would say that's a dead draw tie in my book. So in closing here, very, very quickly, I hope this has been somewhat useful to you. Don't stress out too much about what spells you take. There's only a couple that I think are absolutely critical that you always have on your daily preparations. And those ones are obvious as I've pointed them out, and they were probably pretty obvious to you anyway. So this is just a way for you to be able to know, especially if you're a beginning player, or if you're a player that's not used to playing something like a cleric. If you get these spells and you have them on your prep list, you've done half your job. All right. Well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast Bless on all of you.